On CNN political commentators Kevin Madden, Dan Pfeiffer, and Ana Navarro. Just for those who aren't familiar, that's Republican, Democrat, Republican. We have two Republicans because it's Republican debate.
Dan sees that as a fair fight.
Yes. Dan, let me start with you. Who would the Democratic Party do worst against last night? Who was the strongest candidate you saw last night?
Marco Rubio by far.
Still, you're still bullish on Rubio?
I am. I think the best arguments the Republicans will have against Hillary Clinton, our most likely nominee, is a future versus past, and he embodies the future. He is the only Republican candidate up there who's had an optimistic future-looking, an optimistic way of talking about the conservative message.
And Anna, you are a friend of both Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. You have endorsed Jeb Bush. How do you think Mr. Bush did? How do you think Mr. Rubio did?
I think they both did really, really well in their weight class, and I'll explain that. These are Marco's skills. He is by far the most skilled orator in politics today, I think. And he's witty, he's quick, he's very good at this debate stuff. Jeb had not debated in 10 years. I think that if you grade him with how he did in Cleveland, he by far gets the most improved. Jeb did what he had to do. Marco was consistent, and he was just as good as he was.
What did Jeb have to do? Show that he had a pulse?
Well, he had to show, yeah, that helped.
Show a little fight.
He showed he had blood. He had a pulse. He didn't have sweat. I think being malnourished helped him not sweat in the 85-degree heat. He showed he had a sense of humor. Yeah. He showed that he could be self-deprecating, go on the defense, and he also showed he knew policy. Because Jeb Bush, as I've always said, cannot afford not to get the policy right. But he also had the performance and theatrics much better than he did in Cleveland.
Kevin, who woke up and had the most regrets about last night, and who do you think is feeling pretty good?
Well, I think, Walker, I actually thought had a very strong debate, but I think he had to break through. I think at this point in his campaign, since he's had the most to lose with Donald Trump entering the race, that he had to come out of this debate with his name in the headlines so that, all three of us would be saying, like, Walker was the guy who won last night, clearly. But he didn't. But I still think that he, as part of these, especially when you have a field this big, a lot of what you try to achieve is survive in advance. He's definitely survived in advance to the next round.
Let me ask you,
but because he didn't break through, and because the headlines were all about Fiorina and Rubio, it was just a missed opportunity.
But the question is going to be now, how does this affect fundraising? How does this affect support from the donors?
Right. Yeah.
For Scott Walker, you mean?
For Scott Walker, we've
Who's
seen
been plummeting in Iowa.
We've seen stories today that some of his donors are already getting a little nervous and saying they're going to start giving money to others. So that is the fallout from this debate.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys a question as savvy political operatives, well-seasoned.
What do you mean? We're all young'uns.
well, just smart. Let me just say smart. So I, as a moderator, have a different objective than, obviously, a candidate. I wanted them to debate. I wanted them to distinguish themselves from one another. And generally speaking, I also feel as a viewer, I like it better when candidates don't just take a question and pivot and recite 15 talking points, that they actually engage in the conversation. Right. But do you think when Governor Walker or Governor Kasich, for example, take a question, answer it in 2 seconds, and then just start talking about their records in Ohio or Wisconsin, do you think that works, Kevin? Or I mean, I don't, but I'm biased, obviously.
Look, I think some of the best moments last night weren't because they had time, right? Where it was just a space to talk about, to go through your bullet points, but it was where candidates seized a moment and crystallized their message to a key audience. And I thought Rubio did that really well. Fiorina did that really well. To a certain extent, Carson did it with some evangelicals. So did Senator Cruz with some of these early state demographics that are going to be important to winning there. So that's really what you want to do. I mean, particularly because we have such a large field, the best way to break through is to have a moment of strength.
But you think grab an opportunity from something that's happened organically.
Sure, and I think like Rubio, for example, did that when the question was asked about speaking Spanish to Jeb Bush. Yeah. He seized on it, took it, and had it out of the park.
I think the old way of thinking about this before social media was there's a camera on me, some people are watching it, and I will get to speak to them. So here I'll just do my record. I got to educate, in this case, 23 million people about my record in Ohio if you're John Kasich. In the internet age, you need moments, as Kevin said. You need something that will be not just played on the TV the next morning, but be shared on Twitter and Facebook. And so you got to have a strategy to have those moments. I thought Rubio did a good job of that. I thought Bush came in with the strategy. He missed on the first couple, but he found some later in the debate, particularly the humanizing ones about smoking marijuana, stuff like that. They were good.
He's the only one who did better with the heat and the length. Look, I think you told me on Sunday when I was on your show, I'm not going to make it about me. I want to make it about them. And I think you achieved that. I liked that you brought out the differences. There's a lot of diversity of thought in this Republican field. And I like that you brought out the differences on marijuana, for example, between Rand Paul and Chris Christie. Well, you brought out a lot of differences with Rand Paul because he kind of stands on his, all by himself in a corner on a bunch of issues. But I think that makes a long debate with 11 candidates interesting. And it puts on display that diversity that exists right now in the Republican Party.
There were a lot of differences among the 11, less so with the 4 candidates in the undercard debate, but they did bring it too. I don't know how many of you watched it. There's about 6 million people watched that as opposed to 23. I thought they did pretty good as well, but we have to leave it there, unfortunately.